The Kafirs are, as a rule, uncivilized, the convicts even more so. They are troublesome, very dirty, and live almost like animals. Mahatma Gandhi, 1908. This quote, written by Mahatma Gandhi during his time in South Africa, shocks many who know him only as the father of India's independence movement and a symbol of peace and non-violence. His image as a simple man in a loincloth, leading millions to freedom through peaceful protests, has inspired movements worldwide, from Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States to Nelson Mandela in South Africa. Yet, beneath this glowing legacy lies a more complex figure, one whose words, actions, and choices reveal contradictions that challenge the saintly narrative. This is the story of the darker side of Mahatma Gandhi, a man whose flaws and controversies show he was human, not a saint.
Welcome to Unveiled History.
Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born on October 2, 1869, in Porbandar, a coastal town in Gujarat, India. Raised in a devout Hindu family, he grew up with a deep sense of duty and morality, shaped by his mother's religious teachings. At 19, he left India to study law in London, where he was exposed to Western ideas and philosophies. After becoming a lawyer, he moved to South Africa in 1893 to work on a legal case. It was there, facing racial discrimination as an Indian in a British colony, that Gandhi began to develop his philosophy of satyagraha, or non-violent resistance. Back in India by 1915, Gandhi became a leader in the fight against British colonial rule. His campaigns, like the Salt March of 1930 and the Quit India movement of 1942, rallied millions to challenge the British through peaceful means. He fasted, marched, and went to prison, all while preaching non-violence and self-reliance. By the time India gained independence in 1947, Gandhi was a global icon. But even as he inspired hope, some of his actions and beliefs sparked criticism, both during his life and after his death, on January 30, 1948, when he was assassinated by a Hindu nationalist. India in Gandhi's era was a land of deep divisions. The British ruled over 300 million people, exploiting India's resources while enforcing strict control. Indians faced poverty, caste oppression, and religious tensions between Hindus, Muslims, and others. Gandhi's mission was to unite this diverse nation against a powerful empire, but his methods and decisions didn't always align with the ideals of equality and justice he preached. The quote opening this piece comes from Gandhi's early years in South Africa, where he arrived at 23 to work as a lawyer. Gandhi's activism began after he was thrown off a train for sitting in a first-class compartment reserved for white passengers. This humiliation fueled his fight for Indian rights in a racially divided society. However, his early work reveals a troubling perspective. In the 18th should not be placed on the same level as the Kafir, suggesting Indians deserved better treatment because they were civilized subjects of the British Empire. Gandhi's focus was on elevating the status of Indians, sometimes at the expense of black Africans, whom he described as savages in some writings. In 1904, he wrote that Indians were infinitely superior to black Africans in culture and habits. Gandhi was a product of his era, and his views shifted over time. By the 1930s, he spoke more inclusively about universal human rights. However, his early writings and actions in South Africa raise questions about whether his activism was initially motivated by a desire for Indian equality within the colonial system, rather than a broader fight against all forms of oppression. This selective focus has led some people to argue that Gandhi's early work indirectly supported the colonial system's racial divides, even as he fought for Indian rights. Gandhi's personal life also raises eyebrows, particularly his experiments with celibacy, or brahmacharya. Gandhi believed that mastering his desires was key to spiritual purity and effective leadership. After taking a vow of celibacy in 1906, he began a series of experiments to test his self-control, experiments that many today find disturbing. In his 70s, Gandhi slept naked alongside young women, including his grandniece Manu and other female followers, to prove he could resist temptation. These experiments took place in his ashram, a communal living space where he preached discipline and simplicity. Gandhi claimed these acts were spiritual, meant to strengthen his resolve and demonstrate his purity. He wrote openly about them, insisting they were harmless and consensual. However, these actions caused discomfort even among his closest followers. Some women in the ashram felt pressured to participate, and others, like his secretary Nirmala Desai, later wrote about the emotional toll it took. Critics argue that Gandhi's position of power as a revered leader made true consent questionable, especially when young women were involved. Now, imagine a teacher asking students to do something personal that makes them uncomfortable, claiming it's for a higher purpose. The power dynamic makes it hard to say no. Gandhi's experiments, while framed as spiritual, ignored the impact on those around him, raising ethical concerns about his judgment. Gandhi's stance on India's caste system is another area where his legacy gets complicated. The caste system, a rigid social hierarchy, placed untouchables, now called Dalits, at the bottom, denying them basic rights like entering temples or drinking from the same wells as higher castes. Gandhi spoke out against untouchability, calling Dalits Harijans, children of God, and advocating for their inclusion in society. He cleaned latrines and lived among Dalits to show solidarity, acts that were radical for his time. But Gandhi didn't reject the caste system entirely. He believed in a reformed version of caste, where everyone was equal but roles were still divided by tradition. In the 1920s and 1930s, he clashed with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a Dalit leader who demanded the complete abolition of caste and greater political rights for Dalits. Gandhi argued that caste was part of Hindu tradition and could be purified, while Ambedkar saw it as an oppressive system that needed to be dismantled. In 1932, Gandhi went on a hunger strike to protest a British plan to give Dalits separate electorates, which would have allowed them to vote for their own representatives. Gandhi feared this would divide Hindus and weaken the independence movement. Ambedkar, however, saw it as a chance for Dalits to gain political power. Under pressure from Gandhi's fast, Ambedkar agreed to a compromise, but many Dalits felt Gandhi prioritized Hindu unity over their liberation. Perhaps the most debated aspect of Gandhi's legacy is his role in India's partition in 1947, when British India was divided into two nations, India and Pakistan. The partition was a bloody and chaotic event with millions displaced and up to 1 million people killed in religious violence between Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs. Gandhi had spent decades preaching unity between Hindus and Muslims, but as independence approached, tensions grew. Muslim leaders, like Muhammad Ali Jinnah, demanded a separate nation for Muslims, fearing they'd be marginalized in a Hindu-majority India. Gandhi opposed partition, believing it betrayed his vision of a united India. He went on fasts and traveled to violence-stricken areas to calm riots, but he couldn't stop the growing divide. Some critics argue Gandhi didn't do enough to address Muslim fears, focusing too much on Hindu unity. Others say his insistence on non-violence made him ineffective against the rising tide of violence. When partition happened, Gandhi was sidelined, unable to prevent the bloodshed. Hindu nationalists blamed Gandhi for appeasing Muslims, particularly because he supported fair treatment for Muslims in India. This anger led to his assassination in 1948 by Nathuram Godse, a Hindu extremist who believed Gandhi weakened India. On the other hand, some Muslims felt Gandhi didn't fight hard enough for their rights. Gandhi's relationship with his family also raises questions. He was a strict disciplinarian with his wife, Kasturba, and their 4 sons, expecting them to follow his principles of simplicity and celibacy. His eldest son, Harilal, rebelled against Gandhi's expectations, converting to Islam and struggling with alcoholism. Gandhi's response was to publicly disown Harilal, a decision that caused deep pain within the family. While Gandhi devoted himself to India's freedom, his family often felt neglected, showing the personal cost of his public mission. Today, Gandhi's legacy is a mix of admiration and debate. He led a nation to independence, inspired global movements, and showed the world the power of nonviolence. In India, he's honored as the father of the nation, with his face on currency and his birthday a national holiday. Around the world, his philosophy of nonviolence inspires activists fighting for justice. But in recent years, historians and activists, especially from marginalized groups, have pushed for a closer look at his actions. Statues of Gandhi have been removed in some places, like Ghana, where critics pointed to his early racist views. Others defend him, saying his growth and contributions outweigh his mistakes. His life reminds us that even the greatest heroes have flaws, and their legacies are shaped by both their triumphs and their contradictions. This topic truly challenges us to think critically. Do you believe it's more beneficial to focus solely on Gandhi's monumental achievements, or is acknowledging his less celebrated aspects vital for a complete understanding of history? Let's discuss in the comments. If this video moved you to consider a new perspective, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to join our community exploring the nuanced stories of the past.